Welcome to Environmental Concerns, sponsored by Breathe California, the lung health organization for California. To a lot of people, it seems strange about how much time I spend talking about housing. Um, there are many reasons for that, but one of the ones that really sets us off when we're worried about our air health is that the average new home in the Bay Area is about 36 miles from their job.
Mhm,
We just cannot have people driving those distances.
mhm,
85% of air pollution in a state where 95% of us breathe unhealthy air is coming from mobile sources. So today I'm talking to Elaine Johnson, Director of Housing for Santa Cruz County. We're going to discuss what we can do to try to put a dent in this problem. So we'll be back in about 30 seconds after this public service announcement.
My name is Rene Montez. I've been using the CPAP machine, I would guess 10 years. I got so accustomed to it, I don't go anywhere without it. I take it with me everywhere. From the moment I put it on, I thought it was the greatest thing because the breathing was a lot easier, and after using it for a couple nights, I felt a lot of energy. Breathe California is fabulous.
Welcome back. I'm Terry Trumbull. I'm a volunteer for Breathe California. If you're interested in helping us out, we have 13 different lung disorders, which we discuss on our website, lungsrus.org. And issues like Elaine Johnson and I are going to discuss. Give us a call if you want to help out and volunteer, 408-998-5865. So Elaine, tell us a little bit about what your job is for Santa Cruz County.
Yeah, so my name is Elaine Johnson. I'm the Executive Director for Housing Santa Cruz County. We're a county-wide organization, advocacy organization in Santa Cruz County where we advocate for affordable housing. So we work very closely with our local and state officials and the community in doing what we can to build more housing throughout the county.
So we have a surplus of affordable housing. Is that true?
We're building. As you take a look around, buildings are going up, right? It's more than what we had.
Yeah, I know. So I really am impressed. On the other hand, virtually every city official that I talk to throughout the state, not just Santa Cruz County, is complaining about homeless being a much bigger problem from year to year.
Mm-hmm.
So in San Jose, which is majority of our audience, they're under a threat from the Regional Water Quality Control Board to control all the pollution coming from homeless who live in creek beds.
Mm-hmm.
Are you having that with San Leandro River or Pajaro or any other big river?
I'm not sure if we're having any water quality issues. I do know we have concerns with unhoused. We have a large number of unhoused people that need to get housed, needs to get services.
So we've got a governor that came into office saying we were 2 million houses short. I saw a documentary on YouTube recently where they listed the 5 worst states to live, and they listed California's number 1 because housing costs are so high. That does not argue well for addressing our affordable housing problems.
Yeah, actually, and Santa Cruz County has been named the most expensive place to live in the nation, right? That's a top of a list that we don't want to be on.
You don't
But
want to be number 1?
it's always nice to be number one, but not for that.
Yeah.
But what I can say though, for here in Santa Cruz County, efforts have been made I mean, if you walk downtown Santa Cruz, buildings are being built, people are being able to be housed. You know, we have different organizations here that have given 300% to doing what they can to unhouse our unhoused community. You know, we have a tiny homes projects that's going to be happening, and it's actually going to be happening on a church property. You know, it's really about being creative, Terry. We have to come to this place of being creative of where we're going to build and how we're going to build. Um, yes, because you know, because we can spend so much time looking at and talking about the whys, right? Why we don't have enough. Why is this person unhoused? You know, why did this project get stalled? And I think we know the answers to a lot of those, right? Funding, you know, people don't want things built in their community, the lengthy processes. I mean, but what I can tell you is, you know, doing this work for a while, every organization, every community leader, every county, city leader that I have met with and continue to meet with are doing everything they can to streamline processes so that we can build. Because the process was very long and it can be very long. And I know these concerns are being addressed. And, you know, again, I just look around instead of looking at what we don't have, looking at what is actually happening, right? Is it happening fast enough? I mean, I think it comes to the point where we take what we can get when we can get it. But it's really a community effort. It has to come from the whole community.
I mean, that's typically, um, my hometown for the last 50 years has been Palo Alto. And
Mm-hmm.
we've had for 8 years 2 factions. One that I would call NIMBY, not in
Sure.
my backyard, that's very strongly opposed to changing the character of the community, which to them means adding new people to town.
Sure.
And YIMBY, yes, in my backyard.
Mm-hmm.
And one of Palo Alto's pro-housing council members was elected to the assembly, and our mayor was so offended, who was a NIMBY, ran against him, and quite happily he prevailed in the election on my birthday, November 5th.
Mm-hmm.
I wish the national election had given me a birthday present, but that probably was asking for too much.
Mm-hmm.
So I appreciate the optimistic tone that you offered a couple of times here. Why don't you talk a little bit about what Santa Cruz is doing or what's being built in Santa Cruz County
Mm-hmm.
that expresses some optimism?
Mm-hmm. You know, as I mentioned, if you go to just downtown Santa Cruz alone, Pacific Avenue, Front Street, you know, you have the beautiful tall buildings that are being built. I know working with our fiscal sponsor, New Way Homes, they are building properties in city of Santa Cruz and South County. I mean, there's a lot of development in process. Um, you know, we don't see them yet, but I point to downtown Santa Cruz because that's where it's the most prevalent right now. Um, but you know, projects are going up all over the place, and you know, I don't want to sit here and sugarcoat things and say everything's great and wonderful, because you know things are great and wonderful, and you know we can still build more. We still need to build more. And when you reference YIMBYism and NIMBYism, I don't usually like to use those words, but what I choose to do is connect with people who may have concerns about building in specific, you know, locations and stuff, and really just have conversations with them about the why they don't versus the labels, because the labels don't move the needles. The conversations, the education moves the needle. You know, I bring that from my own personal background growing up in a housing project in New York City. And I know coming together as a community is the only way to move the needle. And, you know, if there are people in the community that don't want to build on community, you know, I respect that. And I'm also always open to a dialogue as to the why. So how do we get them to move from a why not to a yes? Because at the end of the day, I can tell you, Terry, most people I talk to do not want to see people unhoused. They don't, right? Because there, for the grace of God, anybody, any one of us could be unhoused. right? And so, I learned early on, growing up, my father used to say, we don't know how people got there, so don't judge. And so I've learned not to judge. We don't know how they got there, but what we do know and what we can do is what we can personally do to see how we can continue to house people.
So my partner stopped when she saw a homeless person um, living just off of Highway 1 and at an exit between
Mhm.
on-ramp and Highway 1.
Yep. Mhm.
Talked to him, and he was quite content to be homeless. He was a retired county employee with a good enough salary, but meaning it was good enough for him to live, but not enough to
Yeah.
afford housing. And we just need to know that the world is filled with all sorts of stories that make sense on why people might be homeless.
Yeah. Yeah, every circumstance is different. I've known people who, made tons of money and became homeless after they lost their job. I know people who become unhoused, for emotional and physical concerns. And that's why, it's not a one size fits all. But what I do know is a one size fits all is that everyone deserves to have a place to call home. I believe that of my heart of hearts. I absolutely believe it. There's no way in the world you can operate at your best self by sleeping in the street. I can tell you, Terry, there's a gentleman who I've been supporting for 5 years. He's been unhoused, and I didn't see him today, and I'm worried. I
Yeah,
see him, and I'm worried.
you're completely justified in that. I had a friend who I met who was very bright and engaging, a retired Navy cook, and every Monday I would take him to lunch,
Yeah.
which I was doing before going to, was a college professor until I
Mhm.
retired.
Mhm.
Um, but when I quit seeing him, I felt the same way. What in the
Mhm.
world has happened to him? Because
Mhm.
you just got to worry about that.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
we're talking with Elaine Johnson, Housing Director for Santa Cruz County. We'll be back in 30 seconds to discuss more about what our nation, our state, and what we can do locally to improve our housing situation. Be back in 30 seconds.
The different therapeutic methods that we can help our very low socioeconomic status clients who have no alternatives, no anything, and there's still about 15 different resources we got out of this that if you have no resources, no service connection, you can still get aid.
That they are connected, one encourages the other, and that the process of change from backing off from the tobacco is the same as backing off from any other addictive drug.
Everyone can benefit from this training that we just were offered today.
Welcome back. This is Breathe California's Environmental Concerns. We're talking with Elaine Johnson, Housing Director for Santa Cruz County. So I have a government body I sit on, and the county supervisor complained that she had 23 builder remedies projects in her district. That's going to bring in more housing.
Mhm.
But what in the world does it mean?
What in the world does bringing in 23 remedies?
Builder's remedy.
Mm-hmm.
And is somehow, if there's some sort of blockage or reason they're not going forward, I gather it means the builder can just go ahead and build the housing.
So I'm not really clear. When you say the city council, your city council person said they had that in front of them, and
No,
what
it
they
was
don't.
the county supervisor
Uh-huh.
complaining about having 23 builder's remedy projects, and she took that to mean that the county's process was pretty inept if there were that many frustrated developers.
Again, that, as I mentioned earlier, that comes from, whether it's the process movement being slow. I mean, there's so many variables to it, right? At the end of the day, there's just so many variables to it. You just have to pick which one it is, right? But what I do know is that whichever one it is, you have to be able to not just identify it, but how can we remedy it? How can we move forward? How can the project move forward? What is it the developer needs, whether it's from the county or the city, to be able to move forward? I mean,
So
at the end of the day, again, our supervisors, our city council members, they're all partners in this work.
absolutely.
Mhm.
So I wanted to ask you about the initiatives at the state level. One of them has been the state, I want to say Department of Housing, but I forget what their actual name is,
Mhm.
has come up with, I want to call them suggestions, but directions on how many new housing units
Mhm.
each local government needs to build.
Yes.
That's been extremely controversial in the Bay Area. For
Mm.
example, San Jose feels that it's housing rich
Mhm.
because Palo Alto, well, I ought to go up higher, Redwood City through Milpitas along the bay are very rich in jobs, and
Mhm.
San Jose got most of the housing. So
Mhm.
they wrote general plans for the last 50 years that said, we're taking most of the area that's near those jobs and going to designate it's only for job development.
Mm.
The state jumped on them and said, you got to put in more housing. You've got the ability to do it. Has that been a problem in Santa Cruz County?
So it sounds like you're talking about the RENA numbers that each jurisdiction has to produce a certain number of houses by 2031. Well, now that everyone has been certified by the state, the work, I say begin but even though it already began, but the work really begins. Like in my organization, we do work directly with the different jurisdictions on how, now that they have been certified, how do we bring that into fruition, right? And I'm always telling my community partners, we can't fixate ourselves so much on the number because people get overwhelmed by it and say it's not doable, right? But like, I'll point to the city of Santa Cruz for right now. You just have to build, right? We just have to build because the state says that we have to build, so we have to do everything in our power to be able to do that. And so, we work with our individual partners from the different jurisdictions, and that's why we encourage and we endorse and we advocate for the specific different housing projects in the different jurisdictions. And, one of the things I think is really important to know too is, I'm not of the mind, okay, we're just going to build something here. It comes with intention. It comes with the consciousness that we're going to be building up on a community that's already there, right? Instead of just putting this brick here and or this brick there. It's that's not the thinking in which this happens. It's really building on a thriving community that Santa Cruz County already is. And so yes, when we get to those RENA numbers, there's a lot of work to be done. But again, working with our state and local officials, working with our city council and board of supervisors and our housing partners in the county and the city, we have to make it happen. And it's a community effort. And I think, I want to add to that, a lot of it's education as well, because a lot of people don't know about the RENA numbers. And it's important to know about that because what you don't want is you don't want the state coming in and taking away your power, right? So you do what you can, so that doesn't happen. And so, from what I'm seeing and the tables that I'm at, the intention is there. Conversations are happening, things are getting built, locations have been looked at. And so, we just advocated for rezoning of almost 30 parcels. I mean, things are happening.
So I appreciate your optimism. I think it's great to describe it as just the beginning because the numbers have been approved. And so we have every reason to believe jurisdictions are going to do it.
Yeah, as long as the space is available to build. Mhm.
Well, there's a lot more space that's available to build than most people would say. I used to be the state garbage man,
Okay.
and we had vociferous public opposition
Mm-hmm.
to a new dump site going anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And we had geologists do a study, and 3/4 of the land in the state of California met environmental criteria for landfills.
Yeah.
But that didn't mean you were going to put them in certain places. But
Mm-hmm.
there's
Mm-hmm.
just a lot more opportunity than people might think.
Yes. Yeah. And that's why it's about keeping the community engaged, updated, current. Our organization does what we can to engage our community, around housing and what's going on, so they can feel a part of it.
So I used to work for a housing law firm in Washington, D.C.
Mm-hmm.
And for 3 years, we were still, I did this as a law student working for them. But they were still functioning on post-World War II programs like 1946 to 48. Those largely, I have the impression, were eliminated by the time of the Reagan administration in the 80s. Do you see this as being thought of as a big enough problem nationally to do anything at the federal level?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, just look at this last election and the work that what was going on in the Bay Area, Proposition 5, which unfortunately didn't pass, but Proposition 5 would have been a game changer. I think we're very fortunate to have the leaders that we have on the federal level in Congress, assembly members here. I think we're very fortunate that we have access to them, so that they could champion for us and they rally for us.
Partner is active in real estate, and she was complaining this morning that State Senator Weiner from San Francisco has been a pretty successful advocate for housing law changes, was getting beat up pretty badly by people. Do you think it's safe to be pro-housing?
Oh boy, yes. And I actually had Senator Weiner here this past July.
Well, that's great, other than he makes everybody else look like a shrimp.
Well, I align with most of his policies. He wants housing for all. That's at the end of the day, that's what anybody wants, is housing for all. I don't hear people saying, I only want housing for these people, not these people. I don't even like the word these people. It's, but it's housing for all. So a lot of his policies I'm in alignment with.
So an example that maybe I'm giving Senator Weiner too much credit, but I can remember 15, 20 years ago, the State Department of Housing was told to give everybody numbers, but they had no enforcement ability. And I gather now that the associations of governments or the state has been given enforcement authority so that they can herd us into making sure we meet our promises.
Sometimes, we all need a nudge in some way or another, right?
Not me. I'm absolutely perfect.
Nudges are good at times. Nudges are good. But we have a really good, strong community. We have a really strong community here in Santa Cruz County.
So the last 3 years, I've been seeing someone that's very active in this area, and coming over from Santa Clara County, where I lived for 50 years. And I would say this is a much more cohesive, focused area than the Bay Area. They're a lot less interested in solving their problems compared to acting like national politics, even though everybody is a Democrat and votes, meaning all of our elected officials vote that way. But the issue you brought up earlier about don't interfere with local prerogatives is pretty significant.
Mhm.
So just to reinforce what I said, the
Mhm.
last three congressmen from this area have all been fairly good friends, Leon and Jimmy Panetta
Mhm.
and Sam Barr,
Mhm.
and they all talk about this being the Garden of Eden and the most beautiful spot on earth.
Mhm.
And if we can get everybody into housing, I think it'll make it that way for everybody.
Mhm. Agreed.
So, what are the challenges you have? Santa Cruz County, with all of its storm damage, is
Mhm.
desperately short on funding to
Mhm.
repair all of the roads. I watched Kim DeSerpa
Mhm.
uh, making speeches pretty regularly as one of your county supervisors, that it's desperate and important to solve road problems.
Mhm.
Um, Obviously, they're going to try to get FEMA to come up with some money, but
Mhm.
you guys getting enough money to do your job?
You know, there's there's always an opportunity for funding, always an opportunity, especially as a nonprofit such as ours. Mhm.
So we've got maybe 30 seconds left.
Hmm.
You want to give us a short little summary of what everybody should remember about this discussion?
I would say, you know, I say it all the time. Everyone deserves a safe, stable place to come home. And when I say that, I'm really saying it from the heart. I'm not reading off any cue cards or anything like that. Um, because growing up in New York City, I saw early on people being unhoused, living in these cardboard boxes near the vents when it was minus 10 degrees and stuff, and and we don't know how people got there. And so what I would say today is, let's continue to build on our community that is already thriving. Let's not look at it from a negative, deficient lens. Just focus on Santa Cruz County. Santa Cruz County is an amazing place. It's an amazing place, beautiful place. And we're just building on what's already there. We're building on, you know, the greatness of this community. And so, as we continue to thrive, and I share this too with our city and county employers. Everybody plays a role in this, right? You have to have a good wage to be able to pay the rent, right? Or the mortgage, or eat, right? So let's continue to work together. Let's continue to collaborate. Continue to be creative. I mean, I remember when St. Stephen's, which is about 10 minutes from my home, went from a church and is now a church, and it also has housing on it. It's been it's beautiful. I always encourage people to go take a look at it. It works. We have to be creative. And we're not just doing this to do this, we're doing this so that everybody can have a place to call home. We can continue to have a thriving community where kids can grow up and then their kids can grow up and have a place to live. And so I thank you for the opportunity to be here today.
Elaine, we appreciate your optimistic attitude and thank you for joining us. So we'll have another show for you next week.
Okay, great. And I hope people come and sign up for Housing Santa Cruz County. Come join us, do the advocacy work.
Great. Thanks again.
Thank you.